April 1945. Allied soldiers push open the heavy iron gates of the Auschwitz concentration camp in Poland. And what they saw inside made even the most battle-hardened warriors break down in tears. Skeletal human beings, scorched earth, and piles upon piles of thousands of shoes. Shoes whose owners would never, ever return to claim them. In this one camp alone, nearly 2 million people had been murdered. But friends, the real question is, where did this horror begin, and why? How much hatred has to grow inside a single human being for him to try and wipe an entire people off the face of the earth? Today, we are going to tell that true story. So let's begin. April 20th, 1889. In a small town in Austria, a child was born. A child named Adolf Hitler. Hitler's childhood was not easy. His father, Alois Hitler, was an extremely harsh, cold man. He would raise his hand against his son for the smallest mistake. His mother, Clara, was the complete opposite. Warm, compassionate, always quietly trying to shield her son from his father's rage. His father wanted Hitler to grow up and become a civil servant, but Hitler's dream was something else entirely. He wanted to be a painter. From a young age, he loved reading history. He dreamed of a glorious future for the German nation, and he had close friends, many of whom were Jewish. In 1903, after his father's death, Hitler finally felt free. Without telling his family, he left for Vienna. He applied to the prestigious Academy of Fine Arts, but after 2 attempts, he was rejected both times. The teachers were blunt. He simply didn't have enough talent. Many of those teachers were Jewish, and it is believed that this is the moment where Hitler's hatred toward Jewish people was truly born. The rejection shattered his dream. There was no clear path forward, no money, no roof over his head. He became a man of the streets, spending his nights in homeless shelters, wandering through coffee shops and public libraries during the day, selling small paintings just to survive. But deep inside, there was one ambition he never let go of: to prove the greatness of the German nation. He believed the Germans were the most noble people on earth, and one day, leading that nation to its rightful place in the world, that would become the only purpose of his life. But who would stand in the way of that dream? He didn't know yet. Vienna at that time was a complex and extraordinarily diverse city. People of different races, religions, and cultures all lived side by side within its borders, and scattered throughout the city, a large, powerful, and deeply influential Jewish community had taken root. All of this together meant that social and political tension was something you could feel, almost constantly, just walking through the streets. And it was in the quiet corners of the library that Hitler sat, reading, for hours, day after day, the writings of extreme nationalist thinkers. He listened to the fiery speeches of radical voices, and slowly, without him perhaps even realizing it, those ideas began to reshape the way he saw the world. The core message of that ideology was simple: your nation is supreme. Your race is the greatest. Anyone who questions or criticizes that nation is a traitor, and anyone who stands in the way of its progress must be removed. Now, Vienna's mayor at the time was an extremely powerful and influential man named Karl Lueger. He had built his entire political career on one thing: anti-Jewish rhetoric, and it had made him wildly popular. Hitler watched him, listened to him carefully, and slowly, a realization began to form in his mind: just how effectively anti-Semitism could be used as a political weapon. But here's the thing: this hatred toward Jewish people in Europe was not new, not even close. For centuries, the belief had spread across Europe that the Jewish people were responsible for the death of Jesus Christ. And whenever disaster struck, Whether it was a plague, a famine, or any other crisis, the blame, almost always, was placed on the Jews. This is how religious hatred quietly takes root inside a society, and then, over time, it stops being just hatred. It becomes politics. And it was into exactly this environment, this atmosphere of centuries of built-up bitterness, that a failed, hungry, and deeply broken young man slowly began to absorb that poison. Then came the moment that changed everything, forever. 1914, the First World War began. Hitler joined the German army. He served on the front lines as a messenger. He even earned medals for bravery in battle. But in 1918, Germany lost the war. And for Hitler, this wasn't just a military defeat. This was the complete collapse of everything he had ever believed in. The humiliation was unbearable. In his mind, accepting this loss meant denying his very own existence. And so, he and thousands of soldiers just like him clung to a belief. The stab in the back theory. The idea that Germany wasn't defeated on the battlefield. No, they were betrayed from within. By communists. By Jewish people. That's what he believed. That's what he told himself over and over again. It wasn't true. It was a myth, a fabricated lie. But it had already taken root so deep inside Hitler's mind that he would never, for the rest of his life, be able to pull it out. He returned home to a broken Germany. Poverty, unemployment, despair everywhere he looked. And inside all of that despair, a fire of revenge began to burn. In 1919, he joined the German Workers' Party, the party that the world would later know as the Nazi Party. Hitler was a remarkable speaker. There was something in his voice, a kind of power that could almost hypnotize a crowd. He would stand before thousands of people and say, "These Jewish people control our banks. They are looting our wealth. They betrayed Germany in the First World War. Remove them, and Germany will rise again." And the crowds believed him, blindly. Then, in 1929, the Great Depression hit Germany like a hammer. Millions unemployed. The savings of the middle class wiped out overnight. Workers going hungry. And in the middle of all that suffering, every single word Hitler said spread through people's hearts like wildfire. Newspapers, radio, posters plastered on every wall in every city. Anti-Semitic propaganda was everywhere. Jewish people were humiliated in the streets. Their businesses were destroyed. They were removed from government positions. They were pushed into crowded, isolated neighborhoods called ghettos. Marriage between Jews and non-Jews was declared illegal. In 1933, Hitler became Chancellor of Germany, and within a year, he seized the power of the presidency as well and declared himself the supreme leader of the nation. The moment he took power, the arrests began. Concentration camps were built. At first, they were simply places to hold prisoners. But in 1941, everything changed completely. The Nazis announced a plan. They called it the Final Solution. In 1942, 6 special killing centers were constructed in occupied Poland, built for one purpose and one purpose only: the mass extermination of Jewish people. Jewish men, women, and children were rounded up from across Europe and loaded into cattle cars. No food, no water. Many died before they even arrived. Upon reaching the camps, a Nazi doctor would decide on the spot who dies now and who dies later, slowly, through forced labor. Children, the elderly, the sick. They were separated from the rest, stripped, shaved, and pushed into underground chambers. From above, poisonous gas was released. Within 10 to 20 minutes, the screaming stopped. The bodies were then burned and buried in mass graves. Those who were young and strong were sent to weapons factories, worked to the bone. The moment they showed any weakness, they were shot. Of all 6 camps, the most horrifying was Auschwitz, where, on average, 5,000 people were killed every single day. In total, Hitler murdered nearly 6 million Jewish people. This genocide is known in history by one word: the Holocaust. Before the Holocaust, nearly 13 million people across Europe spoke Yiddish, the living heart of Jewish culture. Books were written in it, plays performed, newspapers printed. An entire civilization, centuries old, breathing and thriving. After Hitler's genocide, that language, that culture, was nearly erased from the face of Europe. Completely. In 1945, after Hitler's defeat in World War II, the Allied forces liberated the camps. The survivors walked out. But where were they supposed to go? Their homes had been destroyed in the war. No family, no work. And Hitler had planted the seeds of hatred so deeply that even after the war ended, Jewish people were still met with contempt in many places. They spent their days in refugee camps, the future completely uncertain. It was during this time that they began moving toward British-controlled Palestine. Slowly, they built settlements there, and in 1948, after the British withdrew from Palestine, with the support of the United Nations, they declared the State of Israel. And today, the relentless bombing in Gaza. If you trace its roots all the way back, you end up on the streets of Vienna, where a failed artist let a poisonous hatred take hold inside his heart. Friends, the Palestinian people who had opened their doors, who had stood beside those who had nowhere else to go, today, that very land is being torn apart by devastating conflict. Innocent people, small children, people who did nothing wrong, losing their lives every single day. And it leaves you with just one question. Is this what humanity looks like when power takes over? Friends, if you want to know the full story of how the State of Israel was established and what happened to the people who were already living on that land, subscribe to the channel and let us know your thoughts in the comments below.